For 22 years, local North County Chapter 471 of Amnesty International has been holding an annual candlelight walk at the Oceanside Pier to raise awareness of human rights abuses around the world. KOCT was there to help take up the cause.
Victims are young children, they're teenagers, they're men, they're women. After drug dealing, human trafficking is tied with the illegal arms industry as the second largest criminal industry in the world today, and it's the fastest growing.
And with those words, a rapt audience of several hundred people, from high school students to senior citizens, heard testimony from a lineup of speakers at the 22nd Annual Candlelight Walk for Human Rights, sponsored by North County Chapter 471 of Amnesty International, the human rights organization that has been fighting for the betterment of humanity for around 40 years. This year's topic, human trafficking and slavery.
But it's estimated between 12 and 25 million people are involved with labor and human trafficking around the world. So what does that look like? Well, it can be found in the soybean plantations of the Amazon in Brazil, where men and boys have been enslaved workers for years in subhuman conditions. It's the truck stops on Interstate 40 in Oklahoma and Texas, where 12 and 13-year-old girls from troubled backgrounds are lured by traffickers into prostitution, and they climb in and out of the big rigs on what's called Party Row to service the truckers.
Representatives from the Vista Sheriff's Department, who asked not to be identified, talked to the largely teenage crowd about the troubles that can befall them and their peers.
When you have these MySpace accounts and you have these Facebook accounts, be aware that that's a way in which they'll try to go after you guys. That's our #1 way that girls are looked at. They're targeted.
According to the State Department, of the 800,000 people trafficked across international borders each year, 80% are women and girls, with 1 million children exploited in the global sex trade each year. And with 161 countries affected, the human trafficking industry generates yearly profits of $32 billion. An update from Janice Olson from the Nepal Youth Project, whose mission is to stop Nepalese families from selling their children into slavery, reminded the crowd how one person can make a difference.
So the first year we rescued 32 girls. This year we've rescued over 10,000 girls. It costs only $75 to send a child to school in the village, $100 to rescue a girl from bondage servitude, and $340 to restore a child who is suffering from malnutrition.
Paul Ludwig of Teen Rescue had a warning for teens when they're out with their friends.
If you go to a party and you know, you shouldn't be drinking, but hey, I know, I'm a realist, I know what goes on, but whatever you're drinking, don't just leave the drink out there where anybody can spike it. That's the main thing that they're doing nowadays, is spiking people's drinks.
And once again, to demonstrate the effectiveness of commitment and action, Paul spoke of his organization's successes as well, with the story of the rescue of a girl missing for a year, taken by human traffickers at the age of 12.
And they arrested the slaveholder, and we basically helped her through the testifying process, where the good news is she testified and they held the guy over for 40 felonies, one including human trafficking. So this guy will never see the light of day. And that is an exciting thing. That's what we want to do.
The evening concluded first with the awarding of the Digna Ochoa Human Rights Defender Award to Seroptimist International of Vista for establishing Hope House for rescued victims of human trafficking.
And here our group is giving the Hope House a couple of pots and pans. Very practical.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
This was followed by a candlelight walk on the Oceanside Pier in sympathy with all of the victims of human trafficking around the world.
I'm walking for Chinese workers in Israel. I'm walking for women forced into prostitution and sex trafficking in Russia.
Walking for men and boys in Congo.
I'm walking for women and kids in the Philippines. I'm working for women and children in Kosovo.
This is Peter Boncher for Inside Oceanside.